Hello, Michaela. How are
Hello,
you?
I am good. How are you today?
Yeah, really well. So lovely to be here for another,
Yeah,
my turn to be surprised by the conversation. I'm very excited.
it is. That's good. It was yelling at me. So,
Oh, cool. I love something
yeah,
that's yelling at you.
right? Okay. Are you ready?
I am ready. I'm ready.
Okay. So, let's talk about pressure.
Ooh,
Mm,
pressure.
yeah.
Hmm. So it's interesting actually, because I recently did a bit of a workshop sort of about the truth about stress and pressure. I'd just seen something new about pressure in that like there are some things happening in the world always,
Mm,
but I think particularly at the moment that are difficult for people.
mm,
We've spoken about it before, haven't we? There are things that are just not easy in life. I think there are some families in this country now who are having to choose whether to put the heating on or feed their children. And there's no way on this planet that's not hard. We don't want to spiritually kind of bypass that kind of stuff. So there are external circumstances that are difficult for humans to contend with, shall we say, which probably feel pressurized. But I think there's a real difference between that and stress, which is when the story comes in about the thing that's not okay. Things
mm,
like it shouldn't be this way. It should be better. I should be better. I should be able to handle this better. And also, the thoughts about the future that, it's going to be terrible. I'm going to be out on the streets or that kind of thing. The extra layer, really. So there are pressures in life. There are things happening in life. Um, but how we experience those, how we feel about them, what actually that feels like for us is not coming from those outside things.
mm.
It's coming from the stories about them that we have. And I think it's worth saying that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with people or that they're not doing life right or anything like that. It's just helpful to know and to notice when we're going off into a story about how something is supposed to be different to how it is. I often quite like to say that, if we imagine life is doing life, and if you if you're watching this on the video, you'll be able to see my hand kind of up in the air but if you're listening to it, it'll be a bit more tricky. But we've got life, and then we've got how we think life should be. And I feel like, we can, when you see that action of me rubbing my hands together, that's the feeling, is this friction between the two. Life's doing this. We want life to be this. So this is what we think is wrong with life. But really, that's the friction. That's what we actually feel. That's
Yeah.
the discomfort. And I guess that's what for a lot of people would be experienced as pressure in the body, or just that feeling of being weighed down by life, it feeling like too heavy or too serious, I think, as well, maybe. And more complicated than it needs to be as well, I think. There's a complication factor in there as well, I think, where we think we've got to deal with all of it right now, and all the things that seem to be not right have to be sorted out right now, and in actual fact, if we just take them one step at a time, we can actually handle most things, if not everything. How
Yeah.
about you? What are your
Mm,
thoughts on
mhm.
pressure?
yeah, I totally see that, not when I'm in it, but I totally see the pressure that we can put on ourselves. And I love how you put your hands together, that here's how, here's how we think it should be, and here's how it is. So it's so great. I have a really great example here this morning that I'd love to share, because my son, actually a couple of weeks ago, he lost his regular set of keys. So he was using his spare, and he gets up this morning, and he's going to school right now, and he couldn't find his key anywhere. And he changed the oil on his car last night. My husband was with him, and he was just frantic this morning. And I could see this. And he was sure, like 100% sure, that he put it on the cupboard and that someone moved it. Someone had to have. It's the only answer. And I just let it all play out. And I could see the pressure, like he was just getting more and more and more agitated the more that he was looking in places, and this like keep looking outside at someone, that why would someone move it? So let me just shorten this story, because it went on for about 45 minutes or longer. And at one point I said, just go take a break and just don't. He said, I did that. He said, I did that. I just sat in my room for 10 minutes. And I thought that was curious, that he knew to do that he just stopped and just sat down. What actually happened was my husband, who is extremely busy at work right now, so I'm pretty sure that he has not been sitting and thinking about this for 45 minutes, says, you were wearing coveralls. And that's where they were. And William was absolutely 100% sure that they were not in there. And I said, well, what made you go and look if you were so sure? And he said, because it was just nowhere else. But something came up in Rob, and something came up in William. But the pressure, it was just like, it just all released. So, I mean, there's so many stories in there, but the pressure that he was building, and then something said, just sit down, and it released. And then he got up and did it again. It was like, you could see this, he was like a pressure cooker, how it will release a little bit of steam so it doesn't explode. So he would sit down, and the steam would be released a bit, and then he would get up and start looking again. But it was just so, and then when he found it, it was just like, it just all fell away. So it's like, wow, there was so much. And he had options, because he could have used my truck, but it was just a visual look at pressure, and how he was going from different things to like, what is causing this pressure? Who moved it? Why would that happen? Why would someone do that? It was just fascinating. And then Rob and I had a little discussion, because I said, wow, I saw me many months ago, that's what would happen to me. When I put a lot of pressure on myself, I would start seeing everyone else like getting irritated and barking at others. And it was like them, that they just needed it to give me the space or help me or whatever. It was just fascinating. It was fascinating to see that. And interesting to see that doesn't happen in that way for me. I didn't know that it didn't until I saw it. So pressure, it was all created because really the facts were the keys are gone. Keys are gone, but they're somewhere. They're somewhere.
Do you think the relief that that William experienced when he found the keys, do you think that's one of the things that makes people think that the world works outside in. Because what's really happening there is no longer pressurized thinking about the lack of keys.
Yes.
But what it looks like is happening is that the finding of the keys is making us feel better.
Absolutely. It keeps getting reinforced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Once you know that it's inside out, every experience helps you. You can't unsee it, can you? Every experience helps you to see a little bit more about it being inside out. But when you don't, it like you say, every experience reinforces the misunderstanding that it's outside in.
Yeah.
You know, like with other people's behavior, which is my main my main issue in life, is people don't behave Clare's way, and that is just, that's always been my main problem in life, is that, if everybody just behaved how I want them to, everything would be marvelous, wouldn't it? But that for me used to be, if they just stopped. So if they'd stop doing the thing, I could feel better. So if somebody did, even temporarily stop doing the thing that was irritating to me, apparently, then I did feel better.
Right. All right.
So that, I no longer felt the pressure of their ridiculous behavior. Yeah, so it does reinforce. It can reinforce the outside in.
Yeah. Well, I think that's I just saw a gap in the thinking, because I actually called William to say, hey, can I ask you a couple of questions about how, what caused you? Because at one point I could hear that it was quiet. And that was likely when he was just sitting and just not doing anything. He said he was retracing some steps, or he said, I just took a break. I just sat down. So it's like, that is what we miss. We can miss that he had something inside him that said, stop, and just sit down. And he was calmer until he would get up and start. But it's noticing that the keys are still missing. Yet in these 10 minutes where you're just allowing yourself to just sit, he was probably on his phone or something too, who knows, but to just be and not be actively looking. It was like the keys were still gone, yet you were calmer. So it tells you something that right there. That the keys being unfound isn't creating the pressure.
Yeah, because the pause allowed that apparent pressure to dissipate, didn't it?
Yeah.
Perhaps by sitting, breathing, whatever makes sense. It's something different for me all the time that makes sense in those moments of, kind of being caught up in something.
Yeah. But we miss the fact that the facts are the same. The keys are still unfound. So it's not the keys being lost that's creating that pressure, because the keys are still lost and you're not feeling that pressure. That is really important to notice, to see that it really is. There's that thinking again. It is truly the thinking that we have about it, or just the focusing on it, right? That thinking of where, when it's thinking of, I can't find it, we're looking at where they aren't. keep looking into the space of them being lost.
And I think that where we can get continue that kind of trap is if it looks like the only way to feel better is to find the keys, then we might well continue in that, continue looking in that frantic way with the sense that, well, it's only the finding of the keys that can bring us back to a state of well-being. When in actual fact, what you're saying there is beautiful in that that state of well-being is available, keys or no keys. There doesn't need to be keys for us to feel better.
Yes.
Because the feeling of not feeling okay, the feeling that we lack well-being in whatever way that takes form in us, isn't caused by the lack of keys.
Right. Yep. Curious, hey?
Yeah. And it's there in every aspect of life, isn't it? So where we've noticed here in this country that the price of household fuel has gone a bit silly over the past couple of years, 18 months, couple of years, I suppose. Some people's household bills have been 10 times. I mean, it has been difficult for people. But what my fiance and I, who also is in this conversation and understands this stuff, he and I kind of kept our bearings, I suppose, is what you would say, in that we knew we had to kind of adjust in some ways to accommodate these extra expenses that were going to be going out of the house, or manage not spending as much in terms of fuel. And so we got really creative in terms of like what we've got one of these smart meters that whirs around at a scary rate sometimes, and so we would look at that and we'd notice, when we put the oven on, look at it go, you can see the numbers going up really quickly. When we put the electric hob on, so that's both electric. The electric hob was clearly using an awful lot of electricity, and so we started to experiment with what appliances we're using the most. And then we actually bought a freestanding gas hob and some gas tanks, so we cook on which is, my fiance is an ex-chef and he much prefers to cook on gas anyway, so he's happy bunny. And then we looked at our food and we looked at could we try some different recipes? Could we eat a little bit cheaper here and there? And actually, we got a huge refund from the utility company last £600, which is a lot of money, because of all the savings we'd made. And we were paying on a monthly same amount every month. So because we built up quite a lot of credit,
right,
we actually got a load of money back.
Wow.
So that was, and that was, I think, because we stayed, rather than being caught up in, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay our bills, and getting off into the future and creating all this pressure with our thinking, we were quite playful with it. We were experimenting on how, this is fun. How can we save money? We got an electric blanket for the bed, which is adorable. I highly recommend it. And it costs pennies to run, so we get into a nice warm bed on a night. So there's all sorts of things that we've done to keep ourselves warm and and comfortable, and we have been comfortable, but not spend the money we were spending before trying to keep the house warm. So and I think it's sometimes, I think we need the pressure to take the action. So with lots of things, people think, well, like, if I'm like in this state, I'll fix it. I'll feel like almost we need to push ourselves. The pressure is this: I must push myself to resolve this problem, and the only way to do that is to get really wound up about it. That does seem to be But in actual fact, as human beings, our creative juices and our ability to solve problems is so much better when we're just in this present moment, when we're just calm, and we're just like, right, okay, how can we experiment with this? What could we do differently? How could we bring some ease to this situation in a practical, in a practical way?
Yeah, it's a key question, right? How can I? And it just opens up, it taps into your natural creativity to come up with another way. What else is possible? And usually it's a heck of a lot more fun too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's not discounting the difficulties that people have at the moment, but no matter how difficult the practical world is, we are just better at handling any of it when we are in that present moment. I love that Michael Neal calls it real-time responsive intelligence.
Yeah.
We have access to the answers inside us all the time, but when we're full of pressure, not so accessible.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for lots of people to see it differently. And to realize we don't need to put all that pressure on ourselves to get things done or to get things solved or to experience things better. We don't need it.
Right. Yeah. Putting those deadlines on, creating that pressure. So I make myself do it. Yeah, this is great. This has opened up some new things for me to see here.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. It was a great subject, actually, and a common one that people come up against. So,
yeah, very good. Thanks. You spoke to it beautifully.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure as always.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll talk again soon.
See you again soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.